I'm 5'7", 113 pounds, and I was 16 at the time of the encounter. I'm a multi-sport athlete: track, handball, volleyball, basketball, and hockey, and I have insomnia. This all happened around 2 a.m. on August 10th of 2019. I had been over to my best friend's place because she had just returned home from a vacation, and she had birthday presents for me. Hoodies and gummies, if you're curious. I had spent almost an hour there already, and wanted to head back home soon because honestly, my town is scary at night. Drug dealers, rapists, and murders, you know the deal. So I waved goodbye to my best friend and started walking down her street. I guess a party had just let up, because behind me at the end of the road, about 20 or 30 yards from where I was standing, there were a couple of men walking across the crosswalk. They were both pretty tall, I'm guessing between 5'11" and 6'3". The two seemed harmless at first when I looked in their direction, but soon they came to a stop. They were both looking at me. At this point I felt uncomfortable, so I just kept walking. That's when I overheard what one of them said. "Hey, that's a girl." At this I whipped my head around. They were starting to walk in my direction now, and one of the two men had moved over toward the sidewalk, where there was no light. I knew at this point that something wasn't right, and I began to pick up my pace. They were still getting closer. I didn't know where the second guy was, but when I looked back, the first guy was still following me down the middle of the road. I think that they were planning to cut me off and try to trap me between the two of them. The minute I was about 13 yards from the T intersection, I started to run, and that's when the yelling started. Oh great, now she's running. I hooked a sharp right and then a left. I could still hear them behind me, and at this point all I knew was that I couldn't stop moving. I had to lose them somehow. I was coming up to an apartment building with a small parking lot behind it. There were no lights. I made the split-second decision to veer off into the parking lot, and I squeezed myself under one of the cars. I don't know how long I waited there. It could have been a minute, but it felt like a lifetime. I watched the two men run past. They didn't bother to check under the cars, which was definitely in my favor. The minute I felt that I was safe, I backtracked and took a different route back to my home. I was too scared to take the main route, in the fear I would have bumped into them. I know what I'm about to say is stupid, but I didn't go to the police. I wouldn't have been able to give a proper description of the men because I hadn't seen their faces. If there's anything I learned from my experience, it's that no matter who you are, you need to be extremely careful. You can think that the part of town or city that you live in is safe, but that really isn't the case. There is no protective barrier to keep out people with bad intentions. Please, whatever you do, watch your surroundings as if your life depends on it. If I had been listening to my music and not paying attention, I hate to think what could have happened to me. I hope that no one else has to experience the fear that I did. It was almost like prey being chased by predators. At the end of my junior year's spring semester, I moved into a townhouse which I shared with my roommate of 2 years, and a batshit crazy landlady. The washer and dryer at the new place were broken, so I decided to go to a local laundromat after class to wash my work clothes and a couple shirts I'd stolen from my boyfriend. I had classes into the evening, so this was around 9 p.m. at the absolute earliest, and I had to take the bus to get there. A tall man who looked to be anywhere in his 30s or 40s approached me as I was waiting for my laundry load to finish. His looks were average but pleasant, and he had a smooth voice, yet something about him immediately set me on edge. He sat down on the bench beside me and started chatting me up even though I had headphones in. I am really accustomed to being approached by strangers, whether they are asking directions, randomly telling me their life story, or being creepy. This was naturally a case of the latter, but even for a stranger hitting on me, he was giving me really weird vibes. He asked if I lived in the apartments across the street, and if I had family in the area. He asked if I was new in town, which made no sense to me as I live in a massive suburb city of DC, so why would anyone recognize anyone? He kept interjecting to say how cute and adorable I was, and asked my age, guessing that I was 18 or 19. I was 21 at the time, but people often think I'm in high school even now. The fact that he was hitting on me while thinking I was still a barely legal teen made it that much creepier. I didn't tell him where I lived or where I was from, and said I was getting a load of laundry done for my boyfriend real quick. I lied and said that I lived with him and that he'd be expecting me home soon. The man then proceeded to say that we could still be friends and offered to take me out or invite me in for dinner. The way he smiled when he said it freaked me out. By now it had to be about 10 p.m., and I was super creeped out, so I firmly said no thank you, and tried to put my headphones back in as obviously as possible. He got up and disappeared for a while. Then, as I transferred my laundry to the dryer, he reappeared and started pacing around the small laundromat, intentionally coming up close behind me. The dryers were located on the back wall of the room, so this made me feel like I was being effectively cut off from the exit. He was strongly built and about 6'3", so he utterly dwarfed me by comparison. I'm only 5'4", and had been on a break from the gym for most of the semester, so my muscle was rather lacking. As I kept an eye on his reflection, I found myself thinking of every possible route out, and trying to recall the self-defense classes I'd taken back in January until the dryer finished. By the time I was done, he had left. Something in my gut told me not to exit through the main front door, and when I went out through the side entrance, I saw him sitting directly in front of the main exit with his driver's side door open and his phone out as if he was waiting for someone. I called a friend and booked it to a nearby restaurant where I hid out for at least another hour. I occasionally peeked out of the window to see if he'd moved, but he remained there for another 30 minutes. No one ever came to meet him, and a sick feeling in my stomach confirmed my fear that it was me whom he was waiting for. I ordered some Korean fried chicken to go and called an Uber home. I'm used to having creepy experiences with men, on the metro or when I'm walking down the street, but this felt different than the usual catcalls and following. My body was on high alert and I was so fucking afraid and embarrassed that I'd even gotten myself into that position in the first place. When I got home, I just burst into tears. I never told my boyfriend or my girlfriend about it, and it was months before I ever told my roommate. I recently read a Twitter thread about a girl who almost got trafficked by a guy while waiting for the subway, and was hit with the realization that my laundromat horror story could easily have been exactly that. At the time, all I could think about was getting away, but now that it's been nearly a year, I realize this could easily have been a trafficking attempt. I live in a very wealthy DC suburb because of where I go to school, but it is also statistically one of the highest sex trafficking areas in the country. The way he conducted himself was eerily similar to the other girl's description that I read, and I'm just really thankful that I didn't take that main door. I have no idea what might have happened to me if I had. I live in a farming area with a lot of fields and woodland, making it an easy place to walk my dogs off their leads. About 2 years ago, one evening I completely forgot to walk them. It was around 8:30 during the October half-term, so it was already dark. I wasn't too bothered because I knew the whole area well. I took my large female boxer dog, who was only a puppy at the time but had insane muscle and was already fully grown in height, and my Chihuahua ex-Jack Russell out. I'm a 5'5" girl with quite a bit of muscle on me, as I did a lot of physical sports, including martial arts. I thought I didn't need a torch and believed I was safe. I began walking out of my estate and up a hill with my earphones playing some heavy mental music to get me in the zone for a quick walk on the back fields and then back home. When I reached the top of the hill, leading to another housing estate bordering the fields, I noticed there was no traffic at all, no movement. At this point it was almost 9, and there was nobody to be seen, which I thought was unusual for a well-populated area. Nevertheless, I carried on walking with my little crossbreed biting at the lead with excitement and my boxer trying to attack my shadow. Once we reached the fields, it was almost pitch black with no lampposts, and the only light was from the houses facing the field. I took my boxer off her lead, and as boxers do, she bounded off into the tall grass, while my little mutt followed my heels, nipping at my jeans to remind me he was still there. After 5 or so minutes, my eyes had adjusted to the lighting of the field, and I could see my boxer had stopped a meter ahead of me staring at something. Instantly, my Jack Russell X started growling and stood between my legs. I looked up to see a figure standing around 3 meters away from me. I shouted for my boxer to come back to me, and reluctantly she turned to me and began running to me. I called out and apologized for my dogs, saying something like, "Sorry, she's only a pup, she thinks everybody wants to play." Nothing. Just silence from the figure. I could see that they had long hair and what looked like a long raincoat on. The shoulders were wide, however I still think it was a woman. Once again I called out to her, "Are you okay? Did she jump up at you?" Again, nothing. At this point I could feel her eyes on me and my dogs. My littlest dog began barking and squealing, and my boxer began barking this horrifying bark I've never heard her produce. It sounded like she was trying to threaten the figure. Then I heard the woman begin laughing malevolently. That's when I lost it. I picked up my little dog and ran, knowing full well my boxer would follow me. Like I said earlier, I do a lot of sports, so I'm fast and don't have too bad stamina. I jumped over the gate with my dog in my arms and my boxer right behind me. I glanced over my shoulder and saw the woman clear as day in full pursuit. I couldn't give you exact details. All I can tell you is she looked like something straight out of a horror movie. She was grotesque in every sense of the word. At this point, my boxer was running just a little ahead of me. She knew I was running home and that this woman was bad news. She could have bolted, but for whatever reason, she kept a speed that matched mine. Maybe it's the dog's loyal instinct of the pack or something, I don't know. Anyways, by the time I had reached the end of the first estate, I slowed to look behind me. Big mistake. There she still was, running, quite a distance behind me, but she was coming. At this point, my head was complete mush, but I knew if I went down the route I came from the field, she would catch up to me. So I darted to the left at the end of the estate and ran across the road down the street, my boxer right by my side, and at this point, my mutt had gone silent and was digging his paws into my arm and chest. I ran like I've never run before. At the end of the street, I turned right, which brought me onto a street next to the opening of my estate. I didn't look behind me until I reached my driveway. I put my mutt down, and he ran with my boxer to the front door of my house. I looked behind me. She wasn't there, but I could hear her laughing. So, I ran to the door, opened it, and slammed it behind me, then bolted it. I turned the porch light off and peered out the little window of the door. She walked straight past the end of my driveway. She hadn't seen me. I told my older sister what happened. She told me it was best we didn't tell our dad, as he probably wouldn't let me walk them alone again. Ever since that night, I rarely forget to walk my dogs before it gets dark out, and when I do, I walk them first thing in the morning after.